at the game.
At the Nebraska game?
Shouldn't he be at midfield
honorary
at kickoff?
captain?
Yes.
Yeah, because of UTEP. Yeah. Do you think he's still rooting for UTEP in this matter, or do you think he's good enough memories in Nebraska?
I mean, he's beloved in Lincoln. He's one of the rare guys that got fired,
right?
Because he wasn't very good.
And they came back, and people were excited,
and people were. I mean, Doc, no big deal. And you're going to be here for the UTEP Invitational, Coach? No big deal.
And then every moment that year where the defense was actually a part of any success, everyone's like, well, it's because of Doc's defense. Quickly, how we forget that Doc did not have a good run as a head coach.
One of my many Doc Sadler stories that I have, the first time that Nebraska was going to Big Ten Media Days for basketball, the media complained to the guy that was in charge of like the moderator.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't understand Doc. True story. Like some of the long Big Ten basketball media, first time Nebraska's there, they couldn't understand Doc. And so they said to the moderator, what? And so Nebraska's session was like really short.
Can we see the transcript?
But Doc,
it's like Coach O.
Hey, Doc is one of the greatest gems in college athletics.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's
always very nice to me.
He's just real too. That's not an act. That's just how he is. He doesn't care. He's just a good old boy. I mean, if there's a definition of good old boy, Doc Sadler's the good old boy.
All right, so let's talk about Saturday's game. So Nebraska and UTEP, 27.5 point favorite for Nebraska, which now it's time to win.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of different elements that are part of that. I think Nebraska needs a big start, and I would be very, very surprised if Nebraska looks slow and sloppy out of the gate. They are old enough that some of the game one issues, especially on the defensive side of the ball where schools have trouble tackling, Nebraska really didn't have trouble tackling last year. So when you say, man, they're going to try and get one-on-one matchups and they're going to make Nebraska defensive backs tackle in space, I'm not worried about that. I think Nebraska will tackle well. But I think Nebraska needs a big start. And I think it's important that Nebraska has a big splash in game one. And I'll give you a little history here. The year 2 of Matt Rule, which please, we got to get rid of that. We got to retire that. It's not year 2 of Matt Rule.
Still brought up a lot too.
Because year 2 actually was probably year 1.
Mm-hmm.
Just my opinion. I don't know how you feel. But year 2, first game, Temple against Vanderbilt. 37-7 Owls.
Mm-hmm.
Year 2, first game, Baylor against Abilene Christian. What are they, Jimmy?
Abilene Christian? This one I don't know.
Really?
They're the Christians.
Now I gotta look.
What kind of mascot would you have if you were the Christians? Just asking for a friend.
A nice person, a friar.
Would you just be you just be dressed normal, carrying around a Bible?
Short sleeve shirt and a tie.
Oh, they're the Wildcats.
Oh,
of course they are.
When in doubt, Wildcats or Tigers?
Maybe someday a member of the Summit League.
Oh. Abilene Christian.
But year 2, Matt Rule, Baylor beat Abilene Christian 55-27.
They let them score 27 points.
They did.
Fourth quarter.
I'm not going to run away from this, and I don't think you should as well, for people that have realistic goals and high expectations of the season and want to see Nebraska look different, where you can leave the stadium and go, yeah, there's something there and they look different, is you don't dance with a partner that is shorter than you, okay? When you're at the high school dance, it's the awkwardness of everybody separated and they're sitting on the side of the dance floor and you're starting to size up everybody.
Yeah.
You don't want to be stuck. Like if you're 6'4" and you're dancing with somebody that's 5'6".
Yeah, it's tough.
Okay? That's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough. And you usually dance down to
It started getting a little bit lower back pain. Yeah.
So I know that was a really weird analogy.
No, I get it. I'm with you.
I think it's important for Nebraska to have a convincing opening statement, and I'm not going to run away from that. If Nebraska looks sloppy and there's things that we thought were not red flags in camp, all of a sudden the turnovers rear their ugly head again, I'm going to be very disappointed. I'm not on big red overreaction. I might hop on a podcast and just rant. I don't expect that to happen. And I think even the head man would be a little bit disappointed if they did not have a convincing opening statement.
Right.
I think that's important. Good teams win, great teams cover. I do believe, I'll share my prediction for the roundtable later today, Nebraska will cover the 27.5. And I think that's a big deal when they do.
I think I would add this to how I think that they should look is you're playing to your strengths that we know are indeed strengths right now. Because I think for instance, obviously this is a defensive identity, but we also know that it's been an interchanging offensive line there at UTEP. So to me, that spells out, okay, they are going to put, whether it's Locklear or whoever the quarterback ends up being, McConnell, that person is under duress the entire time they drop back. The other part about it is everyone wants to see how Nebraska is going to be against the run. Okay, well, at some point, you're going to be facing a lot more stiff competition when it comes to the running game. So in this standpoint, from the front seven, that group should stand out big time to where I do think there should be turnovers in this game. On the Nebraska side, Nebraska creating the turnovers. So defensively dominant is first and foremost what I want to see. I was making mention of this because I knew we were going to get in the conversation at some point about those first game expectations. So this is why I brought up the Twitch thing. As I'm watching this thing and I'm seeing these big plays by UTEP, again, this is a video game. Okay, I get that. But I found myself wondering, what would people think?
Did you do play-by-play?
Because I think it was like 14-13 at halftime and they were getting big chunk plays. What would people think if the defense was getting gouged a little bit in power? If the defense getting gouged a little bit in their third down situations? Yeah. Thinking about those things that plagued Nebraska last year on what was a very good defensive showing, but the one thing that we looked at, not being able to get off the field, especially when it mattered there in November, a lot of those different things against a team that clearly the advantage is on the defensive side for Nebraska in this matchup, but that none of that stuff is even showing up. If there's a big play for UTEP, it was more of a fluke than anything. So eyeballs will tell you that story. I think turnovers will also tell you that story. More than anything, though, offensively, because this is where I'm actually, I think you can draw a little bit out of this. Now, a lot of people are going to make a lot about Maurice Westmoreland. Okay, that's fine. I don't know how many people really even watched him play last year. I know I didn't. I just know the numbers. Okay. So
they lost their best defensive player as a fourth-round pick in the NFL draft. So.
Yes. And also, if you look at what that team is going to try to do defensively, because there's similarities in their alignment that Nebraska sees, I do think the offense from to your point about being sloppy first game, things like that, even though that you have a new quarterback, this is where I say, okay, offensive line, you have been experienced. That needs to show right away.
I want to go back to something you said. You said people are concerned that UTEP's going to be able to run the ball.
No.
Oh, I was going to say because Nebraska's going to. Well, I think they're going to throw a ton. UTEP will. That quick game passing.
Yes,
tempo, La Tech.
You got a whole offensive line. That's their first start, and it's at Memorial Stadium against that defensive line. They're not running football.
No, I think the narrative around Nebraska defensively right now is, okay, they were so good at stopping the run. Then you got into November where maybe they wore down a little bit.
Okay,
and
so we're just talking about one game.
Yeah,
we're talking about the opponent we're playing on Saturday.
Right, that's where I say
valid concerns. That's later in the year. I'm talking about Saturday.
So basically, what I'm watching is this defense dominating every aspect of it, from pressure to being able to shut down any type of running game. That shows, because that's the advantage that Nebraska has.
And so people around here, listen. If your eyeballs tell you and your ears tell you that the vibe is different, okay, it feels different. But if you want to be wait and see, I'm not opposed to that, because there are still things about this program, might be a little bit of tease of discussion later on the roundtable, that I am on wait and see. But if Nebraska is truly turning the corner and they're different, it doesn't matter about who they're playing. It's all about them. They're playing a team that this is a great time to get them. There are so many new things about UTEP. I think they made a good hire, and he knows how to coach football, especially offensive football. And in that conference where you could win 45-42, but you're getting him the first game out of the box. Respect UTEP. They got some guys. I mean, they got a punt returner they're going to have to keep an eye on. They got a really good pass catcher. But the bottom line is, if Nebraska is better and Nebraska's headed in the right direction, and they're playing a team that blew out their staff, brought a bunch of Austin Peers in, and try and integrate them in the first game after a 3-win season, you don't dance with them.
Right.
All right? You do yourself well, and you play extremely well on opening day, and you make a statement. And I think it's important for Nebraska to make an impression. All right? 1, win the football game. 2, but do it in a manner where you go, yeah, they might have something there.
Yeah.
Because it's time to start winning. It's not time to start screwing around. And you know what? Oh, God, thank God we won, because you know what? Frost would have lost this game. If you're a real football program and you believe all the work you put in and what you have said,
right,
this is one of those games to open up the season, is that in the third quarter, the rest of the country, when they flash the score in their stadiums, are going, oh, boy, there goes Nebraska. That friggin' Rule.
Yep.
That friggin' Rule is going to be working at Wally's World selling Camrys by Monday. So that's why I think it's important for Nebraska to have a big splash, to have a convincing opening statement. Does it mean anything for next week? Well, who knows? It's week by week.
It just feels good.
The first game, the team you're playing, how you feel about your team, and the ingredients in the blueprint you have, cover the 27.5 boys.
Well, and that's part of the process, right?
41-10.
And in the past, that's been the problem, is Nebraska's been a big favorite against the South Alabamas and the Northern Illinois and the North Dakotas and the Georgia Southerns, and they've lost, or they have danced with them.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, hey, they scored 35. They won 35-11, kind of a quirky game, but hey, they won. But did you feel good about it?
Right. And this perfect example is that South Alabama game. There were so many things about that game. You walked away from it and not feeling like you truly had any grasp of what this team was going to be. Then you had one half against Colorado, and you're thinking, okay, they just needed another. But then we saw how that game ended in the second half. So, yeah, to what you're saying there, this is where I think people that have been burned by this program in the past, it's hard. And I mentioned this even with quarterback play, where it's okay to have expectations right out of the gate. Is a game like this where I know there's not always the most confidence when it comes to the offensive line, for instance. I think this is a game where you should expect Nebraska to be able to wear that group out, wear that defensive line out, even if they have a good pass rusher, to be able, based on what they've seen as well from a schematic standpoint, to be more familiar. But again, this experience, Glenn Thomas said something last night that I think it goes a little bit unnoticed when talking about the offensive line, when people are reluctant to get in the offensive line. Look, there are depth issues at left tackle. We know that. But more than anything, when you've played this much football, there shouldn't be a lot of things that a defensive front is going to throw at you that's going to confuse you collectively as a group. And so, again, this is where I look at that group more than anything. The people like, really, you're going to expect this out of for the most part, a group that's been inconsistent? Yeah, I expect the offensive line to still be able to have dominance in this game. They should. I don't think there should be things that confuse them. There shouldn't be things that you're like, oh, clearly there was miscommunication there. I get it. It's the first game, but when you've played that much football together, I think those excuses, to me, it's exactly that. I think you need to hold them to a higher standard.
I think the guys in Lincoln that are running the show feel pretty good about this football team. I think they would be disappointed if it was choppy and it didn't look like, man, what did we do for the most of August to get ready for this game? It's important. It's important to make a big splash in game one. You win by 4 touchdowns, it's a nice victory.
Go deep on the first play.
And then
that's next week.
And in big spreads, Nebraska's had trouble covering. But if things are different, then this is different.
Yep.
That's what I keep saying. You can't just go, you can't sell me something, and then when I get a chance to see it, you under-deliver.
Yeah. That it looks very familiar in a bad way.
Because then the red flags I have on my wait and see list, they get deeper. And I'm like, okay, people just want Saturday, in my opinion, to see something different. Okay, they want to feel different.
They want to be happy.
They're kind of in, kind of out. Some are more in, and it's perfectly fine, whatever you choose. I'm not going to tell you how to be a fan. Everyone is smart enough to make their own decision. But you just want to, if you want it to be delivered to you.
Yeah.
If the head coach has said for 6 months, I feel really good about this football team, then the first time out of the gate, you want to be able to say, man, I feel real good about that football team. That's That's how you come together.
Where you can say, yeah, I get it. It was UTEP, but it still looked different.
Yeah. Again, it doesn't matter who they're playing on Saturday.
You kick their
Okay?
ass.
It could be PTEU. You know, it could be IUPUI.
Ooh,
Saturday is about the guys that are in the home uniform.
Absolutely.
It's not about UTEP. It's all about Nebraska on Saturday. Next week, it's about Colorado and Nebraska.
Yeah.
But this week, it's all about Nebraska. They just happen to have $1.65 million to write on a big check that they deliver to UTEP, that UTEP's coming here to play. All right? There have been teams that you've written a big check to that have come and stolen your money, stolen your soul.
Yeah.
Let them take your money. But you know what? You're going to make more because, you do on Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
It's the start of a process.
There you go. Feel like a little preacher man.
I don't know if I'm nervous now or excited.
Well, no, why be nervous?
I don't know. You got me convinced that maybe it won't happen.
I've been excited from day one about this thing.
I think they're going to roll Saturday.
We do this. We do in the offseason, like, I'm not going to drink the Kool-Aid. I want to believe the hype. Okay, I've been hitting the groin too many times. I can't have kids anymore. All right,
The God piece.
We have crossed the barrier of our fandom of whatever team across this great land that you root for. You open yourself up to the pain.
Yeah. Oh,
whether
100%.
the good or the bad,
Yeah.
you open yourself up, and it's back, and you open yourself up, and whatever happens, happens.
We just try to convince ourselves, as you get excited about it, that there is tangible reason to be excited as opposed to the hype.
But let me ask you, Jimmy, okay? Because I know how you feel about your team that you follow in KU. Do you feel good about Nebraska?
Absolutely.
Nick, do you feel good about Nebraska? Something is different. There's something cooking there. There's
Agreed.
a vibe. That's my
more
opinion.
than Dylan. There's more to it than that.
Well, because you learned a lesson from the people in Boulder. When you put too much on one guy and you don't think about the other things, you know what? How does that work out?
Yeah.
All right, Jimmy's got an